So let's talk about what Tim Berners-Lee created. To bring his vision of the web to life, Tim Berners-Lee brought together those three things: documents on the internet, structured documents, and hypertext. So by creating 5 key inventions, he basically implemented those three things. So those 5 things he invented was HTML, HTTP, URLs, and HTTPD, which was the first web server software. And number 5 was this thing called WorldWideWeb, which was the first document browser, what we now call a web browser. And by the way, World Wide Web was not originally intended to be the name of the overall system. That was just the name he gave the original web browser. More about that later. But in the meantime, let's unpack each one of those 5 things of the inventions, what each one actually is. So the first 3 are actually things that Tim Berners-Lee documented as what we call standards. So the first one I mentioned was HTML, Hypertext Markup Language. This is the language used to structure and organize content in a document. Instead of just writing the plain text that I was talking about before, HTML lets the authors mark content as, like I was saying before, like a heading, paragraph, a list, and so on. And it gives documents structure so that both humans and machines can understand. So that's the tags. The tags is what I was talking about before, the H1, the P tag. And keep in mind, TBL wasn't trying to help authors create beautiful pages or pages that could be formatted in any way that you could imagine. The point was to allow authors to not worry their pretty little heads about formatting. Just concentrate on content and let the HTML tags do their thing reasonably. So that was number 1 of the 5 things he actually pulled together. So the second thing was HTTP, which stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. So this is the communication methods that the computers use to send and receive those HTML documents over the internet. So when you visit a website, the software, in this case would be your web browser, would send an HTTP request to a server, which is simply another computer connected to the internet, running another piece of software. And that server would reply with the web page. That's it. So that was number 2. Number 3 was the URL, or Uniform Resource Locator. And of course, you're familiar with this. This is what we call a web address. It uniquely identifies where a resource, like a web page or also an image or any kind of file, is located on the internet. And it combines the protocol, the HTTP part, plus the domain name, which could be anything like rit.edu or whatever, and a file path into one standard format that could be used anywhere on the planet. Okay? Then using those 3 standards that TBL wrote, he coded a couple of pieces of software. So this is out of the 5 things he created, those were the first 3. Number 4 is a piece of software called HTTPD, which stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol Daemon. And this was the first web server software. It ran in the background on a computer connected to the internet. And it would be listening for HTTP requests and then send back the appropriate HTML files. Tim Berners-Lee wrote the first version himself to serve documents from his own computer, sitting in the basement of the CERN laboratory. That was, in effect, the very first website. So, and then the 5th thing that he created, which was the second piece of software, is the thing I was mentioning before, is called World Wide Web, which is the first web browser and editor. So Tim Berners-Lee built this on his Next Step computer. It allowed users to not only view documents and click links, but also do things that we don't normally associate it with web browsers. You could also use it to create web pages. It was the first all-in-one tool for navigating and contributing to the web. Now, of course, today we don't associate modern web browsers like Chrome, Safari, or Firefox or whatever, with creating a web page. But that was one of the things that Timble thought might be useful, but just didn't catch on. So, TBL hosted the first website at info.cern.ch using his Next machine, which also ran the very first web server, HTTPD. And by the way, that same machine is now preserved in a museum as a historic artifact because that's where the web officially began. And a bit of trivia here is that Berners-Lee didn't originally call his invention the World Wide Web. In his early proposal that he wrote, he floated working names like information mesh and the mine of information before settling on the name that we use today, which happens to simply be the name that he gave the first web browser, World Wide Web.